Chess, nonsense, and analysis. Yeah, hi, dear viewer. So here we are again. And today I just, thought, man, it's been quite a while since I showed you guys or, something that one can use um, to better oneself technically in chess and thus enjoy it more, have more fun, better results and so on. So yeah, our subject today is calculation. How to calculate, and so because calculation is such a complex idea. I'm going to be doing a couple of videos, because there's going to be different methods, different calculation methods that you actually go for in different positions, Look, chess, it's been said that chess is about 99% tactics, which is true. Well, it's a bit exaggerated in a sense. You will use strategy to get to a good position, but once you have the good position, you have to start going for tactics, of course, to cash in, so to speak. So yeah, let's jump into it. Let's have a look at this game, this position rather from a game. The game was played in a correspondence. It was a correspondence game played in 1968 between Niedermeyer against Bachschmidt. So yeah, correspondence games, by the way, this was the time before computers, and one would write a move, put in an envelope, and send it to the opponent, and so on. So yeah, it took a while, but I think they were much more accurate than many over-the-board games. Right, so here we are. The first thing that you do is you need to understand what it is that you are playing for. What I mean by that, in some positions you could be playing to queen a pawn. In some positions you are looking at checkmating. In some positions you are looking at winning material, and. So the clue to all of that is going to be given to you by the pieces, the placement of the pieces. And let's have a look here. So what you should do is first and foremost cut the board into some patterns so that you have some orientation. For example, here there is a nice pattern. The pawn on G7 is pinned. And then a very important role is played by the pawn on E6, because the pawn on E6 is actually giving our rook access to the square D7. Now, when our rook has got access to this square on D7, the rook can then combine with the queen, and the rook could be attacking the pawn on, or rather, the square on G7. So that is basically more or less what we are trying to achieve. So in such a position, as you know, I'm saying, as I said in the introduction, there are different positions where you will be doing where you'll be going for different methods, right? Depending on the position of the pieces. In this one, I would say that you are not going to battle with candid moves, right? Normally, in some positions we would battle with candid moves. So a candid move is where you are asking yourself what you would play in a specific position. So here, a very good defender is the knight. So the first thing we are thinking is rook captures knight. So first we're going to do it without moving, then we'll move after a few moves. So rook captures knight, and well, black has got nothing but to capture back. Rook captures rook. And now we go for our rook to D7. That was our main idea, isn't it? We are taking the queen, and at the same time, we are taking the pawn on G7 with both pieces. We are thus threatening checkmate. So now the question becomes, what will my opponent play? Now, you possibly need to find the answer to this question before you you would sacrifice on f6 the exchange, because if the response is such that after that there's nothing you can do, then of course it is not working. So it's short moves, but it's a few moves ahead, and we just have to get there. So the first thing to remember is to detach yourself from this particular position, because remember, the position is going to change. So let's do that. So we'll do that without moving. So the rook is no longer on f1. This rook is gone, and the knight is gone. And this guy is on f6. So this rook is now on f6. And then what's happening? We only have one rook here, and this rook is on d7. So in that position, what do you think black should play? If black moves the queen, black is getting checkmated, right? If black moves the pawn or something, black loses the queen. So, okay, then let's go closer. Rook captures. And so this is the position we're talking about. So again here, normally you have an issue with candid moves. So candid moves would be the different moves that would be played by the opponent. You know, the opponent can play here, can play there, can play there. But here, there aren't many options. This is more like you know, the person who wrote about, you know, candid moves and the tree of analysis was Grandmaster Alexander Kotov in his brilliant book, Think Like a Grandmaster. And he was talking about different types of trees. So, you know, he meant like there's a certain variation and then it has got branches. After this move is played, there could be that, there could be like, you know, like that. But here, there aren't so many branches here. It's a very thin, suffering tree, I should have put it that way. So here, yeah, there's only one move to defend against mate. It is rook g6. It's the only move. Rook g6 basically attacks the queen and defends g7. Now, again, it's white's turn to play. Now you've sacrificed material, so you generally want to play forcing moves, you know. So rook captures f6 was a forcing move. Before we do anything, let's talk about forcing moves. What are the most forcing moves in chess? I would say the first one that is very, very forcing is, can I capture anything with check? That means that what makes sense, right? If you capture something with check, if you check, if you attack, threaten mate, attack a piece, and if you capture. These are the forcing moves that you are looking for. So it's white to play. We need a forcing move, and we need to calculate further. Now the question becomes, how do we find a forcing move? Because here we cannot capture anything, we cannot check, we cannot, right? Well, we need something that will help us with our concept. The first concept we had was the G7 square, but now the next concept is the back rank, because the white pawn on E6 is what is now generating our play. If our pawn were to move to E7 and our rook were to move to D8, we would get ourselves a new queen, right? So that pawn needs to be protected. So now it obviously becomes clear that we should play our queen in. So queen goes to E7 in this position, supporting the pawn as much as possible and attacking the black queen. So it's clear to see that black must move back to C8. Because if black moves to B6, white will just simply play queen f7 check. Now when the king moves to H8, white will push the pawn to E7. And black does not have time, because all these checks are not bringing anything. I mean, white is going to be able to defend against all those mates. If you play, for example, queen e3, I can move back with my rook, right? Because I would have my pawn on e7, and I'm ready to queen. It's just you cannot move away from your king defending. So queen c8 makes a lot of sense. So what do we do now? Well, we said we wanted to push the pawn, so we should continue. Again, there aren't many kind of moves. This is that's why I started with this position, guys, so that it makes it easy, you know. You are not all of a sudden tasked, facing a difficult task of where to find the move, how many moves. No, this is just very straightforward. You want the pawn to support your attack, so the pawn must move. So queen f7 check is the logical move. The king must go to h8 and push the pawn, e7. The pawn is, we're able to push the pawn because, well, the first threat is rook to d8 check, where we would win that queen, right? Rook d8 and take everything. So again, we need to find black's defense. Yes, the rook is hanging, but if black captures the rook, unfortunately, black is then going to get checkmated, right? Check, rook takes, pawn takes, rook, queen, checkmate. So what should black play? The threat is rook d8. So there's only one thing. Black must find a way to involve another piece on d8, the rook on a8. So move the queen to g8, isn't it? Moving the queen to e8 is an option, but not a good one. Can you see why not? Maybe you can pause the video, try to see what happens if the queen to e8. And in most of these cases, you are trying to calculate without moving the pieces. If you have it on the board, try not to move the pieces. First, try to calculate in your mind. And then in your mind, then afterwards you play it out. That is how, because you have to train that way, because during the game, that's what you exactly have to do. Okay, queen e8 does not work. Hope you saw that. Queen takes queen, rook takes queen, and the back rank problem is there and cannot be stopped. And black is losing. So it means the queen must move to g8. This is the only way. Now it's clear to us that well, we're going to have to capture. Yeah, now it becomes a question of candidates, I think, in this position. Candidate moves play a role because white could capture the queen. What else could white do? Maybe play rook d8. Okay, is that possible? Not sure if it's a good candidate, but okay, that's something that white could try. But I think it's clear to us that rook d8 is not going to cut it. Because the opponent is just going to capture. Rook captures rook. What are we going to do? If we take the rook, then they take the newly crowned queen. So what does it mean? It means that we have to take the queen on g8. Check. And how does the opponent take? If they take with the king, we shall play rook d8 check. King f7, queen. So they have to take with the rook. And now this is an important moment because, and in many cases in your own games, if you miss the fact that after rook takes g8, there are some patterns that the situation has changed. There are some patterns on the board, but if you don't get to see them, then you might miss the win. Let's start first with what are the new patterns on the board. After rook takes g8, look at the king. The king on h8 is boxed in and has got nowhere to move. This reminds you of what? Of which mate? Of the smaller mate with, the one where you go knight f7, king g8, knight h6, queen h8, queen g8, rook takes h8, knight f7 check, that mate, right? It reminds one of such a mate because the king is boxed in. For that mate, we would need the knight to come closer. And if the knight could land on f7, that would be checkmate. What if we go with our original intention of queening the pawn and play rook d8? Rook d8, unfortunately, is not so great because black has got this move, rook e6. And now it's all over. We cannot defend e7. The pawn is going to be lost, and then we're going to lose the game, which would be a tragedy because we are actually winning. So, two ideas. So now we realize, okay, rook e6 is a thing. Rook e6 is a move that black wants to play to defend the position generally. So let's get closer then with our knight. We move our knight to e4. So our knight moving to e4 creates quite a problem for black, because we want to move our knight to c5, right? Move our knight to c5 to stop the rook from coming there, and then we can continue with our plan of rook d8 and then followed by e8 queen. If the opponent plays pawn to b6, now we kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. We threaten knight f7, and we're also threatening e8 queen. Also cannot be defended. So, yeah, it starts to be very difficult for black to defend this position. And we realize that the position is not defendable at all, because there are two problems that black is having. White stops the rook from going to e6, and white threatens, if need be, checkmate by moving the knight to f6, or maybe sometimes to g5. And that's it. So that's okay. We start here, a position where there aren't many candid moves. But I think the important thing for you to take from this demo, dear viewer, would be after calculating, as the position makes changes ever so slightly, ask yourself what the changes are. How is this position changed? What could be now the new pattern, and so on. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. So till next time, where we're going to discuss more complicated examples. Yeah. Hope you like that. So please do share, like, comment, and subscribe as well if you haven't. Right. Till next time. For now, I will say, good night.